Today, like, part of me feels like a modern day anthropologist at this point. Just because I like to observe how different groups of people, especially in age, which is what this video is about, tend to behave. And I have had a ton of experience hanging out with both people my age, the millennials slash Gen Zer generations, which I kind of group into one category because they're very similar, and then the boomer slash Gen Xer category. Because I've hung out with people my age for quite a long time, and I've seen many instances of people my age avoid responsibility, not take accountability. If you try and hold them to any sort of standard, you're considered toxic, and how dare you rain on their special parade because they're the main character of this world. And if you're not a side character or you don't fit into the way that they want you to fit in, you need to be destroyed, you need to be punished, you need to be all this stuff. Like, for instance, I had a buddy invite me to be a roommate, right? And the second we realized that he didn't tell me that the third roommate didn't have a job, he was expecting me to foot that bill of the rent. And when I refused later that night, he showed up with him and four of his buddies to try and quote unquote convince me to pay the rent. It was a really bad situation, actually. And funny thing is this kid talks about so much about how everyone else is a quote unquote snowflake, and everybody should be just like him, the strong, independent Republican who never asks for no handouts, even though he's extorting money from his friend in an apartment. But because I had a problem with that, he would get defensive and say, oh, well, that's just the way I am, and, stuff like that. And then I remember I was going out with this one girl who caused a lot of drama in the friend group I was a part of before I had showed up, and that's why she was clinging to me so hard, was because I was the only one that wasn't aware of her nature as a human being. And what she would do is she would just instigate drama, and I could already tell, because I had a lot of experience in the realm of game theory and how people interact, that she was saying a lot of nasty things about everybody in that friend group, but still wanted to hang out with all of them, mainly because she was so toxic, like literally toxic. Not her sense of the word, which is just you didn't give me my way. That yeah, she was just horrible. And the crocodile tears worked the first couple times, but after it stopped working, she would run around and tell everybody that I was abusive and that I was a sociopath and that I was saying this about everybody. But everyone luckily saw through her stuff, and then they realized that, she hasn't changed one bit, and she's still trying to instigate drama and get me involved this time. And that backfired, but I was labeled toxic because I wasn't giving her way. Like, it was like a child dealing with Walmart toys, and then her new boyfriend was like that father who was trying to come to all the employees and barter with a reasonable price or whatever, right? Because, like, do you have another one for my special girl, right? But you just see enough stuff like that in people your generation where you are absolutely just blown away, and you're just like, wow, people my age, I'm not like you, like, at all. So fast forward to when I got out of that group and away from those people, and I started doing some more structured things in my life, setting better goals, getting skill trades. And I really started in blue collar work after, because there was so many positions to be filled. I was making a lot of money, but it was very hard on my body. So I started to transition to IT work because there was more money in that. It wasn't as hard on my body, but I got certifications. Like, I got my Security Plus. I did a lot of stuff like that. And I'm kind of just like going through the motions because I do like any sort of skill that I could build stuff with. But then you come in and you start working for the generation that's a little bit above you because they're still in charge of a lot of things. Or you try picking up a job with a different skill that you've never tried before, just in the meantime to hold you off for your IT work. And I remember I was working for this imaging company that was ran by like way older. There was like one person who was probably 3 years older than me at the time, right? But he was the one closest to my age group. Really nice guy. He was just a bystander. But the older people in that thing, like everybody who worked in that shop was either 50 years of age or older. There was no in-between workforce who really wanted to stick with it. And you could tell these guys were that Gen X slash boomer generation. I'd say more Gen X because a lot of boomers are super old now. But the two trainers, one had the "We the People" tattooed on the back, but he was just super explosively angry. Just like he told me, like I was the reason that he couldn't eat his peanut butter jelly sandwich because I was too slow on learning these situations. But the other guy that was training me was so busy talking about all of his exes and all of his hang-ups and how everybody who doesn't think like him is stupid and he's this profound intellect that's been taken for granted by society, right? It was just a sad thing to watch. But I saw the similar fallout in Gen X, these older people. Now, it's probably not just everybody. I think like if you go generation to generation, I know younger people now who have families and who have kids and who are doing it right. And then I know people who have the older generations who don't get involved in that drama and everything. And I understand that not everybody's this bad, right? But seeing these two different groups of toxic people, right? Because eventually I got let go from that job because they blamed me because they couldn't train anybody else. And then they're still looking for employees 3 or 4 years later, where you're kind of like, all right, they just refuse to look themselves in the mirror. And that's what it really comes down to, is just people who refuse to look in the mirror or look at their flaws, or they really just don't care to do better in life or try and be their best selves. Where I see a lot of people who actually do have passion for wanting to be something in life and not be a nobody and strive to be better. But it also kind of dispelled this this giant generational divide between the Gen Xers and like the Millennials slash Gen Zers, because the Millennials quote unquote toxic is the same thing as the Gen Xers quote unquote fragile. Especially where, I mean, I've talked about how my Gen X former jiu-jitsu professor was more interested in talking about politics and how much he hated the Democrats and all that stuff. And, it got to the point where I wasn't even getting solid training because he was so busy going on his personal tangents because the world just wasn't the same. And I would tell him, well, I didn't have a really prosperous economic time. I'm dealing with a fallout, and I'm dealing with all the quote-unquote SJW stuff right off the bat in person when you're just reading it on Twitter from a safe distance. So, for him to say, well, I don't really care because he just wanted to be miserable. And then when I got into another relationship, he had resentment towards me because I was winning in life. And it was just a miserable person to be around. It was sad because you used to like hanging out with this guy, and then he totally just becomes a different thing. So you have to get away from him. And the last time you see him, all he can do is look down at the floor and pout like he drove another person away. When you could tell, it's like he sees the vicious cycle that's right there in front of him. His personality is just absolutely disgusting, but he refuses to look at it because you realize just very few people, no matter what the generation is, and this sounds super misanthropic, doesn't want to look at themselves. Like Gen Xer boss I had one time when I was working for the mail industry right out of college, was always going off about how he's so responsible when, quote unquote, his dad handed him this company, right? He didn't work for it himself. He's just sitting there and he'd go in the back and get drunk. And then one day he botched a notary and got sued for a lot of money. And instantaneously, he was just trying to avoid responsibility or try and find his version of reality where his happy place where he wasn't in trouble. And then once he realized that it was final, he took it out on me and got me to leave the place. And I should have left sooner because I didn't leave on the most mature terms. But I mean, that's just another side tangent. But you see this in the fragile that Gen X uses and the toxic millennials use is like exactly the same thing. And it just comes down to, you don't go to my mind script. You're not fitting the part that I have projected onto you that's going to benefit me most. So I'm going to lash out, project that you're the problem in my life, yada, yada, yada. You're evil. You're the bad man. Go away. Hardy har, 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 that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all just kind of narcissism, and it's kind of sad to see when people use their age as a shield and say, well, the other generation isn't like me, when it's like, I think I've had enough foot in both worlds just to realize that it's all human nature. It's all deflection, it's all avoidance, it's all labeling anybody who doesn't think like you as bad when there's a lot of people who don't think like you. Like even me, there's a lot of people who don't think like me, but I don't think they're bad. I just know that they're going to be living a different style of life, and it doesn't mean I have to hate them. I just don't want really anything to do with them. I really wish them the best, but a lot of people haven't reached that inner level of awareness yet. And usually I like to come at these videos with a solution at the end, but I really think that this is just human nature and the way that the world's gonna go until it finally has to either wake up to its stuff or be put in a pinch. And you look around in the world today and you realize that we're kind of don't have a lot of time left. Like, how far can collectively human beings, not admit, hey man, I was wrong or something like that, before we drive the world into a state of absolute disarray, like what's going on in the world right now? Because I've really come to terms and peace with the way the older generation is of Gen Xers, like being very myopic, nearsighted, not really trying to put an effort into understanding my generation. And then I just have given up on trying to get my generation to have an attention span that's more than 30 seconds. Because, well, one, I am an adult, but so is everybody else. So their flaws are not mine to deal with. I have to spend a lot of time dealing with my own flaws. And it got easier once you realize that this whole ageism thing is just a giant gaslighting spectrum to keep you from like the one thing that it is just human nature at the end of the day. And it really has, like, admitting that, it kind of feels like a weight has been lifted off my chest and shoulders, and it feels really good. And when I get that feeling, when I admit something to myself, let me tell you that I feel like I'm telling myself the truth in this aspect. But that's my little misanthropic tangent for the day. If you have any thoughts or anything like that, be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and I'll either respond to it or not if I see it as worth responding to. But thank you guys very much for watching another long form video. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.